Hello there guys, what is going on? Daniel Charles back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Hope you're doing well and keeping safe. Hope you had an amazing Christmas. If you celebrate it, it was a lovely time personally. It was the first proper Christmas my family has had since 2019, and I think there's quite a few people who had that. It was supposed to be last year, but then COVID hit us once again, and luckily everyone remained healthy and we were able to have a decent Christmas. So I hope if you were celebrating Christmas with your family, you had a really good one. And apologies, I couldn't get a rational perspective out last night for the Bournemouth game. We are going to speak about the Bournemouth game very shortly. Once again, just busy and sort of prioritising spending time with family, having a few drinks, enjoying yourself, which I think is necessary at this time of the year. I did put a little review out on TikTok. If you aren't following me on TikTok, please go and do so at SonOfChelsea. So there may be sort of exclusive content on there as well, just giving my thoughts. But as I say, we'll get to that. So much to get through in today's show. We've got transfer stuff. We've got injury news. We have got shock sort of twist in terms of who Chelsea are going for in the transfer window as well. It is dominated obviously by transfers, but some big players within there and potentially a huge month coming up for Chelsea, even bigger than what we anticipated going into the winter window, and some big positions that Chelsea have needed to fill for a while, and we'll get into all of that stuff. I think the best place to start, and before we do, please, if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of the Chelsea content. Chelsea are back now. We've got a ton of games in January. I looked at it. I was surprised at how many games we still have. So it's still going to be a lot of content coming up on the channel as we head into the new year and try and hit that goal of 30k subscribers. If you are listening on the podcast too, thank you so much for tuning in. Son of Chelsea is a part of the 90 Min podcast network. If you haven't checked out the exclusive podcast yet, 2022 in review, you can find it on the podcast feed. All audio, 35 minutes, just myself rambling on about Chelsea's mental 2022. So go and give that a listen if you haven't already. But we're going to start with the news confirmed by Chelsea. There is just too much news today. And, just to give you behind the scenes on production at the moment, I recorded the full podcast, 16 minutes where I covered literally everything. And then I go on Twitter and Chelsea have announced they've reached an agreement with Mould for David Datro Fofana. Not the end of the world, but I had to add this as well at the start of the podcast regarding the news. All good, Chelsea. We're going to get him in on January the 1st. We spoke about him in detail last week. A big deal for Chelsea, hopefully for the future. But I had to add it in today's podcast because there's too much news about Chelsea. But let's move on to the rest of the podcast now with the Reece James injury, because that is the one negative, the big negative of last night. And we've had confirmation from the club. We had reports from Simon Johnson from the Athletic that Reece James' injury is to rule him out for 3 to 4 weeks, up to a month. The club said in a statement. Simon Johnson here reporting that the injury suffered by James in Chelsea's victory over Bournemouth on Tuesday is not as bad as first feared, with the England defender hoping to return in 3 to 4 weeks. It's a little bit like the Wesley Fofana situation last week where he's kind of aggravated the same problem. There is fears that if this persists for Reece James, he's probably going to have surgery. Hopefully, touch wood, fingers crossed, praying that's not the case, but it's another massive setback for an amazing player, and it really does worry me because my big fear of Reece James is that he's just going to be one of these players that we've seen over the years who's just kind of cursed with injuries and his body keeps breaking down. There could even be an argument I've seen from some people that he maybe needs to change position, and the physical toll and the demand of being a right back, a wing back in the modern game might not be what is going to keep him fit. But I think that'd be a great shame considering the talent that is there and the impact he had, even though not always directly, but you saw the level of Chelsea's game with Reece James on the pitch, the areas Chelsea were able to exploit, the way Chelsea were able to move the ball so smoothly through the thirds. It wasn't just, of course, Reece James, but he plays such a massive part in it. And fingers crossed, because this is a brilliant player, and I really, really hope for his sake. He's had to come through so much this year already in his career, and I just hope that he can get through this and Chelsea can get him back, because it's a big question heading into January, isn't it? Chelsea recruiting potential backup for Reece James, and it may be a necessary thing for the second half of the season if this continues to be a problem. So hopefully it is only 3 to 4 weeks and he can come back fit and firing for Chelsea. But let's get into the game. 4-3-3, very happy with that formation. For me, the superior formation. I love using it on Football Manager. I love using it on FIFA. But also, it was the formation of the best Chelsea team in history, the 0-4-5 team. But it's not just that. I think that Potter got it spot on. I think he really did, with also the profiles of players in those positions, which has been a problem for Chelsea in recent years. I think it has, in terms of maybe different coaches maybe not putting players in their best position, and kind of where are their kind of attributes going to really excel for Chelsea. And maybe that's why we've seen some awkwardness with certain players, particularly in the final third, where there really was a lot of potential and optimism to be had there. Kai Havertz, I think, is my man of the match for last night. He gets a goal, he gets an assist. The goal itself, brilliant number 9 play. But I just thought all round his connection to Raheem Sterling, who also had a really strong night. It was a real angry and determined Kai Havertz that I wanted to see after the World Cup. And this is the Kai Havertz again. You know, I've been very critical of Kai Havertz, but I've always maintained I think there's a talent there. And it's just about consistency. And I also think last night proved that it isn't always about positioning. Yes, he was kind of playing this deeper role where he was kind of rotating at times and being fluid, as people like to say, but he wasn't playing a defined role. He can play as a forward in Chelsea's system, and I think that really benefited him. I thought the use of 2 wingers, 2 natural wide players in Christian Pulisic and Raheem Sterling as well, created that width, created those problems. I think Christian Pulisic was brilliant. Really do, even though he didn't get on the score sheet and, you know, deserved a penalty early on. Some terrible officiating last night from Hooper, but, you know, Chelsea got away with it. But, you know, I think for Pulisic, it was a really, really encouraging performance after an encouraging World Cup. That's really good to see. Sterling, I've already said. Dennis Zakaria, I think, could be a bit of a revelation for Chelsea. He's just adding something that it's so simple analysis. There was more to his game than this, but watching him live, that physique, that dominance, that kind of just presence in central midfield, but it was also his mobility and also his ability as an attacking midfielder to get forward. You saw his influence and movement in the second goal that was expertly finished, sublime finish by Mason Mount, who really needed that goal for his confidence. I thought Thiago Silva, despite limping in the first half and we thought he was going to have to go off, had a really good game too. Just all round, really, really encouraging game. Yes, the injury to Reece James, I felt Chelsea flagged a bit. I do wonder if some of that is fatigue, because a lot of these players have not only played in the World Cup, but some of them didn't. So I don't know. I think for what Chelsea fans have been moaning about and the sense of negativity and pessimism before a ball was kicked last night, I don't think you can really moan that much. Chelsea had to win that game. They did, but they also did it with some style and things that I think should give us confidence moving into the next game, and hopefully we see that development from the players. Let's move on into the transfer news. Enzo Fernandez, a name that we have spoken about on the channel before. We got these reports out of Portugal that apparently Benfica could be selling him next month, and they could be selling him to Chelsea because apparently Chelsea have gone in for Enzo Fernandez. They're ready to table over 100 million apparently for him, ready to activate his release clause, and Benfica may already be looking for replacements. Zar Cancelo has actually reported this for the Evening Standard. So it's kind of gone from a little bit of a rumour that seemed a little bit crazy and suspect over some of the sources that were reporting it last night to credible people reporting it. Massive, it really is. If Chelsea were to go in for a central midfielder, I have to say I'd feel a little bit uneasy. What is the world coming to if Chelsea finally sign a central midfielder? I have seen the comparison. In 2014 we signed a Benfica midfielder. The year after that we won a Premier League title. Of course that was Nemanja Matic. Very different story, but and a very different feed. But Enzo Fernandez, I know a lot of people find him very exciting, and obviously is coming off of a winning World Cup with his nation, Argentina, and scored a brilliant goal and really contributed to their tournament. But as well as really impressed with Benfica this season, and it's going to cost Chelsea a lot. It really is. But you know, I think this investment, if you're going to invest heavily anywhere in Chelsea's squad, it's central midfield, and it has been central midfield for so many years. So I'd like to know your thoughts. Do you think this is possible? Do you think this is just paper talk? You know, do you think it's unrealistic to see Benfica let a player like Enzo go, even though they get a massive fee for him? They'd make a massive profit only signing him last summer. But their Champions League group, they done so well. They're into the Champions League, and of course their league form too. So we'll see. Another player that was once at Benfica, Joao Felix. Apparently Chelsea eyeing a January loan deal for Joao Felix. This is from the Telegraph. We did speak about Joao Felix as a potential option for Chelsea next month. Apparently Chelsea are considering a loan with an option or obligation to buy in the summer, depending on the terms Atletico want for Felix's departure after the Portugal international's 4 seasons in Madrid following his move from Benfica. Chairman Todd Bowley is believed to be willing to move swiftly for a deal. Felix would compete as a left-sided forward who can also play on the right, with Kai Havertz in frame to play as centre forward. Felix, you know my feelings on him. I I'm not sold. And the reason I'm not sold is just he's kind of once again one of these positionless players, and I do slightly worry he'd come in and get mixed up at Chelsea. This is a player who's lacking confidence, I think lacking a bit of trust. Now, we know in football how quickly that can change if he does go into an environment that does change things. I mean, look at Zakaria, for instance. There are good and bad options, and there are good, I think he's a talent. I really do. I just wonder, again, resources in the next month, should they be spent on Joao Felix? Are there other attacking options Chelsea could be going after if, say, Fofana is going to be going out on loan and Chelsea are looking to sign a centre forward? I think there are maybe more suitable options, but Joao Felix, I'm not. It'd be silly of me to sit here and tell you that he's rubbish, because that's obviously nonsensical. There quite clearly is a talent there. I'm wondering, with Chelsea's history and Chelsea's plans, what do we do with the player if he arrives? That's always my big question with attacking players, particularly after the failures of recent years. And I think it's logical for all of us to have those questions over a number of players Chelsea are targeting. But as I say, let me know in the comments below. Do you want Joao Felix? Do you think this is going to be a good loan deal and could turn out to be, a bit of a gem in the second half of the season? Let me know. The final transfer story regards, I think this is definitely more concrete, and it is regarding Monaco defender Benoît Badiashile. Apparently Chelsea see him as a priority from Monaco, and Chelsea are talking to the French club about recruiting the France international. While currently there is no agreement between the Premier League side and Liga and counterparts, multiple sources believe he will join in the weeks ahead for around 35 million euros. That's around 30 million pounds. Kind of come out of nowhere, it really did, and it shocked me. And I was kind of like, I think it was Christmas Eve this story broke, and it's kind of developed since, and it looks like it can happen. Chelsea want to move swiftly for another defender. I've seen some of the logic behind it, right? Thiago Silva ain't going to go on forever. There's even some suggestion that Kalidou Koulibaly may not be here as long as his contract says. We'll see in the second half of the season. I don't want to rush to judgment. I think we have to see how Koulibaly does in the rest of the season, but there is a fair point. There is also a fair counterpoint that I know I'm about to bring up regarding Levi Colwill, but I was lucky enough to speak to a French football expert before the game against Bournemouth, and it was interesting hearing from him regarding Chelsea's links that there was kind of a little bit of surprise or frustration that he wasn't taken to the World Cup, and he maybe should have been taken to the World Cup with France, and obviously they went to the final, lost. But I look at the performances of Meccano, who was really unconvincing in the tournament. Badiashile, I know people who know him and watched him are impressed by the player. They think just if you isolate him down and forget about the context of Chelsea's squad, forget about the context of Levi Colwill, this is a good defender, a developing one who could offer a bit of dominance and security and really thrive and get better at Chelsea. He's in the young profile again of a player that could become better with age at Chelsea. So Chelsea, the one thing I'd say, no matter, we don't always have to agree about all the targets, one thing I would say is Chelsea being proactive, and they aren't in every case looking to spend over 100 million. Some of these are targets that quite clearly, I wonder if Lawrence Stewart has a little bit of influence in this, because obviously we got him in from Monaco, and hopefully the recruitment team is already working their magic and trying to make things happen to strengthen the squad, because it also is becoming apparent with all these very proactive deals for some key players, not only the ones for the future, that Chelsea, it seems like to me, Chelsea are desperate to get top four. I think that's what the message that is being sent right now is, that Chelsea aren't just going to rest on their laurels. The new ownership want to get top four. They want to maintain Champions League football because they probably want to go again in the summer for some big players. And the way to do that is to invest in this window. There is always risk, but there's risk, as we know. Chelsea's transfer business, kind of flip it on its head. We can talk about the problems with signing in January, and Chelsea have had problems signing in all of the windows. So we can sort of sit there and go, let's wait for the summer where players can be more integrated. We've done that and they've still failed. But I think in terms of the defensive side, we've had a little bit more success in recent years, and maybe could add that quality. Maybe could add, it's not just what I like about it. It's not just for the short term, it's for the long term. That is my kind of big thing about January. I don't want 30-year-olds coming in and that we have no plans for beyond the next 6 months. You want to be buying players that you do see a future with, that can become first team members into next season. That's my kind of big thing for the next month, and I'm sure you guys will probably agree on that, even if there are some kind of shorter term ones that you maybe think could offer a boost. I think Chelsea need to be looking at the value, as I say, not just for securing Champions League football and getting back into the top 4 race in the Premier League. It's also about what they're going to offer for the next 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 years in key positions across Chelsea's squad. That is it. Chelsea obviously back in action again on New Year's Day, which is my birthday. Please don't ruin my birthday, Chelsea, this year. Once my birthday fell on, the Spurs game. Remember the 5-3 Harry Kane showing up? That fell on my birthday evening one year. So fingers crossed that does not happen this year. We're playing against Nottingham Forest, who watched against Man United. They are pretty tragic. So hopefully Chelsea can continue that performance. I really like the use of the 4-3-3. Maybe in games, where Chelsea feel like they can be a bit more dominant. We'll see how that all goes. We've got Hakim Ziyech, who had a good World Cup. Mateo Kovacic too. Apparently both of them back in training, which is good. And as I say, hopefully Reece James' recovery goes well in the next 3 to 4 weeks. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for watching. Follow me on Twitter @SonOfChelsea, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.